So everybody understands what partial dominance is? Something that is similar to it, but is a bit more complicated, is something called co-dominance. Co-dominance. Co-dominance is when both alleles show when both alleles are present. Both alleles show when both alleles are present. So if we took that example that I gave you of crossing purple flowers with white flowers, for the offspring, they wouldn't be pink, they would be splotched. You would have about 50% of them would be purple splotches and 50% of them would be white splotches. Everybody see how that works? And that's co-dominance. Can you imagine if he'd had just one trait that had either of those phenomena? You get an idea here? He got pretty darn lucky. Easiest example I can show you of this is in human blood types. Human blood types. And this is a case where you have one gene and three alleles. Three alleles. One gene, but three alleles. Now, each human can only have how many alleles? Two. Both of them can be the same, so they're homozygous, right? But they can also be different, and the heterozygotes in this mean different things. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. The gene is the I protein. We just represent it with a capital I if it's dominant. And it has two dominant alleles, A and B. I put the equal sign there to exhibit that they are actually codominant. As you might imagine, if your genotype is that, your blood type is going to be type AB. Everybody see that? This I protein is what we call a surface antigen. A surface antigen. It's a protein that sticks out on a red blood cell. It acts like a recognition symbol. It acts like a recognition symbol. If you're a white blood cell and you're wandering along and you bump into another cell, you want to make sure it belongs, don't you? Otherwise, you get a friendly fire instance. We saw that happen in the news, didn't we? You mistakenly recognize a good cell as a bad cell. That is called an autoimmune response. And let me tell you, autoimmune diseases are real tough on people. My ex-wife had about 6 different ones of them. And by the end of our time together, it was more than the two of us together could manage. Not good times. So everybody see how that works? Now, you heard of blood type AB, haven't you? You've also heard of people who have just blood type A or just blood type B, haven't you? Does anybody know what the fourth blood type is? I heard somebody mutter it. Type O. Type O is an interesting case. A is dominant to the recessive. B is dominant to the recessive, but they're codominant with each other. Everybody see that? So if you have the state where you are homozygous for the recessive, anybody want to guess your blood type? Oh, you got it. Essentially what it means, both copies of the I protein are defective and do not make a protein. So if you have type O blood, your red blood cells are essentially operating in stealth mode. They're not sticking out these little recognition proteins.
Would O negative be the same or just be a little bit different?
O negative deals with a second antigen called the Rh factor. We don't want to get into that today, because then we have to start doing dihybrid crosses, and you get 16 box Punnett squares, or you have to break out algebra. People don't like it when you mention anything higher math. Quit laughing at me. I'm a nerd. I like math. Made me a lot of money in my day. Did I tell you all that? When I picked up a different job, I actually left teaching for 4 years and went into finance. Everybody asked me, why are you in finance? Your PhD is in genetics. And I said, have you seen what people make in education? Have you seen what people make in finance? Oh, I'm here to make money. But you studied science. I use math. You use math. It translates. Oh. Never occurred to them that I could actually understand what they could talk about. They did not understand what I talked about. Interesting 4 years of my life, I will say that. But anyway, back to this. Does everybody see how this works? Now, somebody who's type O, like me, this is my genotype right here. My blood cells do not carry any recognition markers. Did I give you a transplant of my blood or a transfusion? Yes. Because his immune system could not even detect my cells. Type O is the universal donor, And when you add in the positive and the negative, type O negative is the most desirable. You can give it to anybody for any purpose. And yes, I happen to suffer the misfortune of being type O neg.
But the sad part is you can't give, like, if I give you my blood, it wouldn't work.
O neg people can only receive from other O neg people. So there is a huge demand for my blood. And let me tell you, you want to know who the worst vampires are? Besides those glittery people in Twilight? The Red Cross. Every 56 days, I get a phone call. Would you like to donate today? No, I don't. Get away from me. Dracula's less than me. They offered to bring the big bus by my house one time. They were over to high school. I'm not talking the little van, I'm talking the bus. And I'm like, wait, you people are going to drive the bus to my house just for me? Yeah, it's on our way home, it's no problem. I'm like, you're not getting that bus up this road. Oh, sure, we don't mind. I said, no, you're not understanding. If the school bus can't get up this road, your bus can't get up this road. So I met him down at the bottom of the hill. What do they do for that, right?
At least you got a free ride.
At least I got a free ride. No, I had to hike down and hike back up. I try to give as often as I can because it helps people. But type AB is the universal acceptor. They can take blood from anybody. The reason for this, they make no antibodies against either variant of the I protein. Why? Because they're circulating the A variant, aren't they? They're also circulating the B variant. So they have no antibodies against anything. My system, on the other hand, makes antibodies against both A and B, so I can't take any. Everybody got that down? So type O negative is the universal donor, type AB positive is the universal acceptor. What about type A? So if we got blood type A, we know we've got to have one of those guys, don't we? Everybody agree? What we don't know is what the second copy is. It could be homozygous. Does everybody agree? Both copies are the same. You get type A. But since A is dominant to the recessive, if you're heterozygous, what's your blood type going to be?
A negative.
Well, remember the negative doesn't quite count here, but it will be blood type A. Does everybody see that? And the same holds true for B. Imagine if Gregor Johann had gotten hold of that. Don't worry, that's as complicated as we're going to get. Is everybody okay with that? I just wanted to show you how quickly it gets a bit more complicated when you start adding in multiple alleles and other phenomena like codominance. So has everybody got that?
You said AB is the assessor, or?
A and B are codominant to the recessive. Y'all want to try a genetics problem? Someone with type A blood is married to someone with type O. That's you? Well, I wish you hadn't told me that, because now I can't make the accusation.
Wait, can you say that quickly?
Sorry.
Somebody with type A is married to somebody with type O. Everybody got that? The type O person gives birth to a child with blood type B. Did the husband sire the child? Do a Punnett square and show me why.
Oh.
Anybody? So you say she cheated, huh? Anybody else got an idea? What do you think?
It could be another recessive gene from a grandparent.
Could be another recessive gene from a grandparent. Could not, because the B is codominant. Does everybody see how that works? Here is the genotype of the mother. Everybody agree with me on that? The genotype of the potential father is that. Does everybody see that? The mother can only contribute the recessive. So we've got those. You know the father is going to be doing this. We don't know if this allele is going to be this or this, right? It could be either one. Does everybody see that? Thumbs up if you understand that. Give me a thumbs up if you do. Most of you get it. Is there any way that the father could pass on a type B allele? Since they're codominant, the father's blood type in that case would have to be type AB. Does everybody see that? So in that particular case, there's no way that person could have fathered that child. And it's really kind of intriguing because since this is my area of interest and expertise, I follow it fairly closely. And as you might imagine, a lot of people have been doing ancestry tests and finding out that their ancestors aren't who they thought they were. I actually ordered a genetic test kit for myself that I was going to use. This is about 20 years ago. And then I thought, my best friend is adopted. I bet he would like to find out more about his birth parents. So I gave him the kit and he tested it. And he's been able to work out his actual biological family tree on both sides. Turns out his father never knew he existed. He was a product of a one-night stand from a Marine who was traveling between duty stations. But it turned out that this Marine also married a Samoan woman, got stationed out at American Samoa, and my best friend has about 7 half-siblings. He got a family picture. It's hilarious. You see him surrounded by all these big, burly Samoan guys. They were as happy as could be to have another man in the family. He's taken a couple of trips out there, brought his family. So that's the fun side, right? The dark side is when you find out that your ex-wife who died 10 years ago lied to you, and none of the 3 children that call you daddy are yours. I know a particular case where that happened as well. Pretty wild, isn't it? DNA does not lie, but you have to understand the rules. Make sure you get that down somewhere. The DNA doesn't lie, but you have to understand the rules. And there are a lot of cold cases that are being solved. I actually was involved as an expert witness in a sexual assault case. Y'all want to hear that? 15-year-old male was accused of sexually assaulting a 3-year-old female. Was actually the 15-year-old's niece. So the mother shows up and is accusing her nephew of doing this, and the father takes the son in and says, I need you to be truthful so I know how to defend this. Did you do it? The son says, no, Dad, I did not. So the father then walks in and says, DNA test, SAE kit gets done now. The mother started trying to back off of the accusation. Father said, no, you come into my house and you accuse my son of this, we're taking it all the way. The reason the father did this is because he happens to be close friends with somebody who's a professor of genetics at the time.
That was you, wasn't it?
That was me. And once they did the test, the results were sent directly from the state crime lab to me via the attorney. And the attorney asked me for my expert opinion, and I looked it up and I said, there is no evidence whatsoever that any form of sexual assault took place. He said, how can you tell that? You're only reading the DNA. And I said, because there is no indication of any foreign DNA present in this sample. Every last bit of it belongs solely to the alleged victim. And he said, would you write that in the letter? And I said, sure. He said, well, this will be a sworn affidavit. And I said, do you need me to come testify? I'll drive there on my own expense. I'll stay the night. He started laughing. He said, we don't usually get that from our expert witnesses. And I said, well, they're generally not my godson. And he was completely exonerated, obviously. The lawyer did the smart thing because he didn't let me see the results of the physical exam, just the DNA. And as an outside opinion, mine matched what the state crime lab had said. They're pretty wild, isn't it? Y'all have heard of serial killers, haven't you? You want to hear the worst one I ever got involved with? Now, what I'm about to tell you are separate crimes, every single one of these. It's a separate crime and a separate instance. Total serial murders, 13. Baker's dozen. Home invasion rapes, 50. Home invasion burglaries, 120 plus. This happened over a 10-year span in 2 separate locations in California, or 3 actually. Went from about 1976 to 1986. Started as some break-ins in Central California. It escalated to the home invasion rapes in Northern California. The perp almost got caught on the 50th rape. He escaped, and then the murder started in Southern Cal. And they didn't even link them to the same guy until the year 2000. How did they do it? DNA. And this is where I got involved with it. As an outside consultant, they were asking around about what exactly can you do with DNA? Can you determine relatedness? Well, yes, you can. That's what Ancestry is up and running for, right? So they actually put this guy's DNA into a public database. And they waited and they waited and they waited. And in 2017, they got a hit from a relative from the 1830s. As in, this new person and our perpetrator went back and were united 5 generations ago. They got a professional genealogist, and on her own initiative, she built a family tree that had over 200 entries on it. Based on the likely age of the perpetrator, based on when the crimes took place and where they took place, they narrowed it down to 5 possible suspects. Suspect number 1 looked really good in terms of age, but didn't match the profile. Suspect number 2 appeared to be a perfect match to the profile, but he was on the absolute upper limit of the age of the perpetrator. They said he was between 20 and 35 when he was committing his crimes. And this guy would have been 34. On a hunch, the lead detective followed suspect number 2 to Hobby Lobby. Suspect goes into Hobby Lobby. The detective walks up with a little swab and swabs underneath the guy's car door handle. Perfect match. Goes to the judge to get an arrest warrant. Judge says, "You had your hand up under that car door handle in the parking lot, did you?" Detective says, "Yes." Judge says, "Anybody else could have put their car door hand under there and accidentally flicked it. People go to the wrong car. It happens, doesn't it?" Detective says, "Okay." Stakes out the guy's house, waits until he puts his trash out, goes up at 3 in the morning, opens the trash can, gets out the trash bag, finds a used tissue in there, runs the DNA, perfect match. This time the judge says, "Get him." And they arrested him. So he'd gotten away with these crimes for starting about 42 years, 32 years after his last crime, and they put him away. That shows you the power of it, doesn't it? Pretty wild stuff. People ask me, "Why do you like DNA?" There's another case where they found a torso and an arm buried in a cave. I think it was Utah or Wyoming. I don't remember the specifics. Well, obviously somebody had been murdered, right? They got DNA from it. They put it into the database, and they found a match with a guy who went missing in the late 1800s when he was pulled out of a jail and lynched. Just shows you the power of DNA. I've seen cases where they have identified victims that were not identified, followed by the killers who died decades ago. Y'all ever heard of the yogurt shop murders in Austin, Texas? 91 or 92, they found 4 girls aged between 15 and 17 had been sexually assaulted, shot in the head, robbed, and they burned the yogurt shop down. They actually arrested 4 young men who were in their late teens, charged them, convicted them. 2 or 3 of them ended up on death row. They proclaimed their innocence. The convictions were overturned and they were released, and it still wasn't settled until last year. They found a .380 shell casing in a drain at the yogurt shop, managed to get enough DNA off of it that last year they matched it to a suspect who had been shot and killed in police in 1998. You had a question?
I was wondering if we have all this evidence and like science and stuff, like why had they never caught like the Zodiac killer? Like if they have all that DNA and stuff like that, because that wasn't really that old.
With the Zodiac, part of the problem is the only DNA that I've heard that they have is a partial sample. They weren't able to get a full sequence. And this was 20 or 25 years ago. And what they got it from was the adhesive on the postage stamps that he had licked and stuck the stamp on and mailed it to the TV stations. The problem is you are limited to the simple fact, was there DNA there? Number 2, how long has it been since it was there? Number 3, how much of it was present? Number 4, does he have relatives in the system?
He was very careful for that fact. He wore
At that point, nobody had a clue that DNA could do any of this. You got to remember, DNA itself, the structure of it, was only discovered in 1953. Y'all have heard of that story, haven't you? Watson and Crick. Do y'all do anything besides watch TikTok?
I don't even do that.
Neither did you.
I don't even do that.
Watson and Crick were the 2 people who won the Nobel Prize for discovering the double helical anti-parallel structure of DNA. And what they did was essentially a colleague of theirs who worked in the lab down the hall by the name of Rosalind Franklin was doing X-ray crystallography, and she did X-ray crystallography of proteins and nucleic acids, one of which was DNA. Watson and Crick essentially stole her data, realized that this was the structure of DNA, and they tied it to genetics. They published it, got all the credit, won the Nobel Prize. Rosalind Franklin got ovarian cancer from all the X-rays she had been using and died in her 30s. Watson died just 2 or 3 years ago. Man was the biggest egotistical, well, I can't use that kind of language. He definitely thought he deserved the Nobel Prize. And he was a playboy and he was a pervert. Well, I better shut up. Yes, scientists have lives too. We're subject to petty jealousy.
I know for one thing, you know Jack the Ripper, right?
I know who Jack the Ripper was.
If DNA was like back then like more viable, he probably would have been caught way quicker. But
Well, if you believe the reports, they caught him 10 years ago. You all didn't hear about Jack the Ripper and the DNA. Supposedly, at one of the murder sites, a victim's shawl was found. You all know what a shawl is, right? The shawl had apparently been used by the alleged perpetrator to clean himself up after doing his little deed. Police procedures being what they were back in the 1880s, they didn't exactly sanitize the crime scene. They didn't exactly have chain of custody. They didn't exactly store things properly. You see where I'm going with this? This shawl was taken from the crime scene by one of the policemen and was kept as a family heirloom and passed down for the next century and a half until finally somebody came forward with it and said, I have this shawl that belonged to Catherine Eddowes that was found at the site of her murder. It also has semen stains on it from Jack the Ripper. So they did the DNA and they took the number one suspect that the police in the 1880s had, one butcher by the name of Aaron Kosminski, and apparently, supposedly, matched the mitochondrial DNA to Kosminski's descendants. You think that would stand up in a court of law? Not a chance. Prove that the shawl belonged to the victim, was obtained at the crime scene, and remained uncontaminated for 130 odd years. Yes, ma'am.
Can't they use like DNA to like tell if it was it Sherlock Holmes? He was the Chicago killer around the same time period.
Sherlock Holmes was a fictional detective written in the 1890s. He had nothing to do with Chicago.
Holmes or something.
Huh?
Talking about H.H. Holmes.
Yes, him.
What?
H.H. Holmes.
Oh, H.H. Holmes, the guy who ate children.
Yeah. Because I've seen where people speculate that they were connected.
The problem is, and this is what I'm hoping you take home from this, is how do you have DNA from a Jack the Ripper crime scene that has remained uncontaminated and in a verifiable chain of custody for 150 years? I'm waiting. Until you have that, all you have is a stained cloth with somebody's story that's been passed down for 5, 6 generations. My point is, it doesn't undo police work. The guy I told you about, the Golden State Killer, the only reason they got him was because that genealogist was willing to build the family tree and put all the time and effort into it. I mean, that was a project. It took them almost 6 months to build it. I remember when I got the news that they had arrested that guy, it blew my mind because I never thought they'd catch him at all. So enough about DNA. I'm sorry, you guys let me go down this rabbit trail, but you see why I like it. It's very interesting stuff. Bottom line, today we have what we call genome sequencing. Genome sequencing. We don't just sequence a single gene. We sequence all of them. All 3.2 billion letters of DNA in your genome. Pretty wild, isn't it? The thing I want you to remember is you still have to have documented evidence that each sample came from where you think it came. You can't just make something up. That cop that was investigating the nephew in that case I told you about was bound and determined to pin that crime on him. He even tried to bluff a confession out of the young man after having the DNA results and knowing it wasn't him. I'm not saying all cops are that way. I'm just saying you can't just go around saying this DNA versus that DNA. You got to be able to show, yes, it came from this person. Yes, it came from this crime scene. Yes, it came from the killer. It's a valuable tool, but it does have its limitations. The one I'd be most interested in is if they could find Zodiac. Yes, ma'am.
Did the mom get in trouble? I'm just genuinely curious.
No, but to say that the family has had little to no contact with her would be an understatement.
Did anybody do that, or did she just make it up?
She's just making up. She basically thought that her brother-in-law would be so upset and worried about his son being accused of this that she could shake him down for some money. Which is ironic because I knew her as well and she knew me, and she should have thought, hello, we've been as close as brothers for 3 decades at this point. The child's named after me. Do you honestly think he's not going to involve me? Do you honestly think he doesn't know what DNA can do? Now, I'll admit, he had way more knowledge than the average Joe. Because I talked to him about the kit and what it could do and all that.
She probably thought like, he probably knows just basic science, but didn't know what to do.
Well, it was so funny. He said, as soon as I mentioned DNA, she said, boy, her expression changed and she started trying to back off of that. And I said, nope, you come into my house and accuse my son of this, we're taking it all the way. And I told him he was smart to do that because if it does ever come up for any reason in the future, he's got a documented, records-based proof of clearance. It's definitely worth an investment in a child's future, I think.
I'm not gonna lie.
Huh?
Like today's world, it's very scary for somebody to just falsely accuse you of something if the DNA doesn't prove it.
DNA is a very powerful tool, but again, you have to make sure that it's collected properly, stored properly, and tested properly. One last one, then I'll quit, because otherwise we'll be talking about cold cases for the rest of the period. Young woman, 17 years old, runaway, forced into prostitution, beaten to death with a rock out in the wilderness of Wyoming. Her killer, to taunt the police, left the rock right by her body. This was in the mid-90s, I think it was 97, mid to late 90s. The cop who was in charge of the investigation had recently had training on the possibilities of DNA. He knew there was no way that the technology of the time could recover any usable DNA from that rock. But what he did was smart. He documented it, entered it into evidence with an evidence tag, sealed in a bag, chain of custody intact all the way, and had it stored in a refrigerated, secured facility for 12 years. He, being interested in forensics, was attending a conference in Florida where a lab down there gave a presentation on a new technique that they had that literally was a microscopic vacuum that sucked up DNA. So he immediately went up to the presenter after his presentation and said, how long do you think it's going to be before you have that technique on the market? Well, that took the presenter aback because this was not a commercial presentation. This was to criminalists and forensic investigators and scientists showing the potential. So he asked the cop why, and the cop told him. And he said, I would love to have my rock tested, but I just don't, we don't have the funds for it. You don't have a kit for it. And the presenter said, I tell you what, we have been wanting to do this for real. We'll do it for you for free. Cop flew up back to Wyoming, or Utah, checked the rock out of the evidence, kept it in a cooler, again, documented, verified, chain of custody all the way down, was met at the Tampa airport by a local law enforcement who checked it into custody there, took it all the way to the lab. They told him they hoped to have something for him in a couple of months. By the time his plane landed back in Salt Lake City, they had the killer ID'd. Arrested him before dinner that night. Apparently, he did that one personally and had great satisfaction in doing so. So, let's call it there on genetics. That sound